all the games I used to play in my younger, wilder days. The game of clubs and teas had never crossed my mind. But after some discussion with my closest, dearest friends, I decided...
Welcome into another episode of the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast, brought to you by Rotoballer.com. We're a couple weeks into the 2021-2022 season of the PGA Tour Premium Session. Joe Nicely is here with me, lead golf editor at Rotoballer.com. Joe, Rotoballer.com is hitting the grind hard on NFL, and just like they are, we are too on the golf front. This week plus 6 more weeks to go with the fall swing. Joe, what does the Rotoballer have going for us for as far as premium package right now?
Yeah, man, I encourage people to go visit Rotoballer.com right now. This is actually the best time of the year to sign up for our PGA premium package. You can use my promo code NICE, N-I-C-E, and grab that for less than $65 right now, Andrew. That takes you through next year's Tour Championship. So you're getting almost a calendar year of our PGA DFS research station, my DraftKings Core 4, Spencer Aguiar's Vegas report, Josh Minnett's course breakdown. You get all that and more every week for less than $65 for almost a calendar year. It's the best deal that we run all year. So definitely encourage people to go to rotoballer.com. Check that out right now.
Thank you, Joe. Rotoballer.com, best place in the world for your daily fantasy needs. Now on to golf. Last week, Sanderson Farms Championship, Sam Burns 22 under. Holding off none other than the Nick Watney. I feel like I hadn't said his name in a decade, Joe. 2003 he turned pro. 2006 he was looking like he was going to be a future star in golf. I actually put his game right there to say like a Harrison English, Joe. Hits the ball a long way, hits his irons great, decent putter, a little rough around the greens. But what can we say about Nick Watney? Now as a mid-30s-year-old guy that's got a lot of time under his belt, but just hasn't been there in close to a decade competing on a regular basis, Joe. But Sam Burns with another victory. What can we say about the Sanderson Farms Championship?
Yeah, man, fun event. Lots of guys out there going low, so that always kind of makes it a fun sweat, especially from DFS. A DFS perspective, you're kind of never really out of it. If you get all 6 of those guys through the cut, you can have a guy in your lineup go out there and shoot a 62 or something, and you're right back in the thick of things. But to kind of follow up with Nick Watney, really good to see him up there. Kind of a veteran guy now at this point. It seems like guys our age, Andrew, remember Nick Watney as a young player, kind of young, up and comer. A lot of people, a guy that a lot of people had pegged as a star, but it's kind of hit some tough times over the last few years. And really interesting, he's actually playing on a one-time exemption, top 50 all-time money list. Is the only way he's actually playing this year is due to that special exemption. So really cool to see him play well and get a runner-up finish. That's going to propel him a long way this year. And we said it before, Andrew, these tournaments matter. When we start talking about FedEx Cup points, qualifying for a PGA Tour card next year, getting into the Masters, WGC events, these tournaments are very important. We'll talk about a couple guys this week who it's important for. But as far as Sam Burns, man, we mentioned him a lot on this show over the past 18 months or so. He's a player we really like. He's got a very modern game that sets up very well for these modern day golf courses. Bombs it off the tee, hits his irons well, and he's a great putter. So that's going to go a long way kind of on these modern tracks on the PGA Tour schedule. His second win in just a little over 6 months, I believe. And I think he's got a lot more coming, man. Really talented guy.
Absolutely. Sam Burns, future star, bombs it, putts good, nerves of steel. Interesting in Nick Watney. Like I said, I haven't talked to him in nearly a decade, but he's an all-time top 50 money leader. Think about that. Yeah. And you're going to be able to find him in the low 6K range a lot in tournaments that he's in until you see some consistent play out of him. So I don't know. The guy's got a swing that don't quit, bombs it. So distance is never going to be an issue with that cat. So moving on, though, Joe, let's get right into this week. Shriners Children's Open, Shriners Hospital for Children Open, been around since 1983. It is played at none other than the TPC Summerlin in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hopefully it's on my little bucket list next trip out there. I'm going to knock that out. But the course designed in 1991 by Bobby Weed. Fuzzy Zero was a consultant on the design of the golf course. Matter of fact, funny, little bit of worthless knowledge here. Fuzzy Zero won the inaugural playing at this tournament in 1983, back when it was held at another course. And TP, it's like I said, been around for 38 years. Last decade, as far as defending champions, Martin Laird's won it a couple times. Kevin Na won it a couple times. Several players that are not in the field have won it. There's a couple more. See, Ryan Moore and Webb Simpson. I think that's the only defending champions that are in, or former champions that are in the field this week. We got Cantlay, DeChambeau. They're not playing this week. So let's just get Ryan, or sorry, I forgot this part. Par 71, 72.55. This got bent grass greens, which is really very unlikely for Nevada. Bermuda rests the way out with a little bit of ryegrass on the tee boxes. So you see mostly Bermuda throughout all golf courses out in Vegas, but TPC Summerlin's a special track. Like I said, it's definitely on the bucket list. Top five track in Vegas to play, I think. So let's just get right into the slate, Joe, not wasting time. Surprisingly enough, Brooks Koepka in the field this week at 11-1. I guess he's feeling a little healthier, wants to get the rust knocked out in the fall. So let's just start. Brooks Koepka, probably the cat's meow on this track. However, there's some good players up here above 10K. Will Zalatoris, Webb Simpson, Abe Anser, Hovland, Burns, Kepka. Now, like I just said, that Kepka is probably the cat's meow here at the top. He is, if you look at his accolades, his resume, but probably going to be avoiding him in this field, Joe. Scores are going to be low, even though it's a par 71. Not very long golf course for the altitude. Joe, is anybody here in these top 6 players I just said that you're going to have your highlighter out and be highlighting them?
Yeah, man, several guys I think you can look at up here. Obviously, these are top-notch players up at the top of the board. And as we get on through the salary scale, Andrew, this is actually a really strong field, man, to be a swing season event. Some really good players teeing it up this week. So excited to get into this one. It's always a fun tournament. As you mentioned, I think we're looking at 20+ under to win this thing this week. And that kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit about Brooks Koepka and what to do with him. He's a guy we like to play on tough golf courses, a guy we like to play in big-time events. We saw a very good stretch of golf from him over the last 3 majors of 2021. But we did see a decline, pretty steep decline throughout the FedEx Cup playoffs, and obviously ended with him withdrawing from the Tour Championship. We do feel like he's healthy. He played in the Ryder Cup, set to tee it up this week. But you wonder about his focus. You always kind of wonder how he's going to show up in these non-major events. So I have my concerns with him, especially with him being the highest priced guy on the slate. I think you could probably make an argument for him in GPPs, kind of as a contrarian play. I don't think he's going to carry a ton of ownership. But that's kind of my thoughts on Brooks. Not all in for sure on him. We'll probably hold off more than likely, other than toss him in a few GPP lineups. Sam Burns, you mentioned, coming off a big win. This cat is very streaky, man. After his win at Valspar earlier this year, he almost went back-to-back. Finished runner-up at the Byron Nelson, so I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see him keep things going, man. Had a great week last week, tee to green. Gained 8.3 strokes on approach last week, 6.1 strokes off the tee. And get this, Andrew, he won that golf tournament and lost 2 strokes putting. So if he gets that putter going this week, man, look out, especially if he kind of holds on to that tee degree form. Really, really interesting to just go right back to Sam Burns. Victor Hovland's making his debut here. We love him. Kind of in that Brooks Koepka mold. Almost prefer him on harder golf courses. And then Abe Anser, man, what can you say about the guy? Hits fairways, hits greens. Ranks first in this field in good drives gained. And when you hit a lot of fairways and a lot of greens, AP, good things tend to happen. He's got 2 fourth-place finishes here in this event over his last 4 Shriners starts. Love his form, love the course history, love the fit. So Abe Anser up here at the top might be my favorite above 10K, though I will toss out Webb Simpson, who's been a course history beast. Got a win here back in the day and has not finished outside the top 20 in his last 4 Shriners starts. Webb, kind of after a disappointing 2021, he'd like to make a big statement this week. So some really, really strong options up there at the top of the board, man.
Yeah, I love Abe Anser and Webb Simpson both. If I was pulling just write down 2 names without looking at any statistics at all, it went ahead and be with them because they fit that mold of par 71 around 7,000 yards. They seem to be right there. And if they've got good course history, especially Webb Simpson, he seems to show up in the same tournaments every year. So I like those 2 names a lot. Moving on down the 9Ks, not very many names in here, but a 2-time winner and Kevin Na. I think, Joe, this is one of those 4 tournaments you circle Kevin Na's name, and unfortunately, as much as you dislike to play him, I don't see him WDing in his home on his home course. So I like this group right here, Siwoo coming up. I love Kevin Na. Just love him. And another name I like in this group, Scotty Scheffler, 9,700. Like Kevin Na the most, just because, 2-time winner, he's going to be up there. So what are you at on this group?
Yeah, I think both those guys are certainly in play, man. We know Kevin Na's history here. 2-time winner in this event. This is, as you mentioned, one of the handful of courses where you can really kind of roster him and feel well about the way he fits the golf course with his lack of length. Throw a couple names at you, AP, that you didn't mention. Hideki Matsuyama, coming off his best ball striking week a couple weeks ago at Fortinet, coming off his best event in several months. Really looked good tee to green there. And I think this is the type of golf course where he can succeed. And then coming in hot, man, our boy Siwoo, he's played well here. Has a T15 and a T8 over his last 3 Shriners starts. And he's coming in hot, man. Had a T8 last week, gained 5 strokes on approach, had a T11 in Silverado. We know he's very, very streaky, and we kind of want to ride the hot hand with him. But I am a little bit scared of this price tag. That'll kind of bump me down a little bit on Siwoo. But man, the course history and form really are a nice combination for him this week.
Yeah, you know me, I have a hard time putting Siwoo up there just because of the consistency rate with him, especially if you're lining him up against this group of guys. But you're gonna get a little bit of discount versus the group. But just paying 100 more DK points, I'm gonna go with Kevin Na over him every time. Moving on down to the 8K range, it feels like this group, talent wise and namesake wise, a lot stronger than the 9K range. Kind of weird here. I like nearly all the people in this spot right here, and I could see the winner easily coming out of this group. Is Patrick Reed going to be on a revenge tour this year? That's the question we need to ask. Matt Wolf lost in a playoff here last year. We love Joaquin Needham any week. Seems like. How's Corey Connors 8,800 in this field, Joe? He looks like he'd be sure enough to be a 10K guy in this field. Loved him last week. Did not play great on the weekends. But I love all these guys in the 8K range. Joe, pick out a few for us.
Yeah, man, I really don't think you're going wrong here. You mentioned Corey Connors, a player that I think we both really loved last week. Played okay, played well, looked good. His first start in a while, so he knocked the rest off. Course history here isn't great. He will need to get the putter going a little bit to make enough birdies to win here, but you have to love his tee to green ability. Patrick Reed, man, you mentioned maybe something we can look at also with Kevin Na and with Webb Simpson. I mean, these guys that were kind of snubbed for the Ryder Cup team, a lot of motivation coming into this season. So you never want to count Patrick Reed out, but he's not looked well. Had the illness stuff going on around the end of the season. So not my favorite play this week other than maybe a contrarian look. 2 guys you mentioned I really like. We're talking GPP upside. We're trying to win tournaments, trying to build rosters that can win tournaments, Andrew. Joaquin Niemann and Matthew Wolf. Definitely circling those guys this week. Definitely going to have a lot of exposure. I think Niemann's probably the more consistent, conservative option between the two. He's played well here, has a top 10 and a T13 over his last 3 Shriners starts, and had a really consistent season last year, man. But another guy with upside doesn't have consistency. There's definitely some volatility. We don't know what we're getting from one week to the next. But Matty Wolf, man, we talked about him on this show last week as kind of locking him as a GPP option. He shot 11 under combined for the weekend last weekend, Andrew. and he's rolling into a golf course where he lost in a playoff last year. So love that upside there. Just roster him knowing, hey, there's a 78 in him, but there's also maybe a 62 in him. So I really like him in GPPs there at 8,200.
I love Matt Wolf right now. Just don't know where his mind's at, Joe. And moving on down to 7,000s, another hugest plethora. It's going to be hard to pick out a great value play of the week, I think, in the 7K range.
Yeah, man, it's a really good field.
Yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot of guys right here in the 7K range. Russell Henley, who you love, Miko Prayers coming on, Kevin Streelman, Vet, Maverick Mcneely, who we all love. Maybe you could even throw in a Danny Willett on this style of golf course where the golf course is not too long. Brian Harmon, I mean, coming off one of his best seasons of all time. Who knows if Leishman's ever gets the putter hot, what he can do. Palmer's solid vet. Seamus Powers got a big bright future. Kevin Kisner, short end of the stick on the Ryder Cup. Ricky Fowler, is he making a comeback? He did have a pretty good last few weeks of the season last year. Scott Stalling is always going to be a threat in a weaker field event. Stuart Sink, vet, who had coming off probably his best year in a decade. Martin Laird, two-time champion and defending champion. Norlander last week, coming up just a little bit short. Ryan Moore, defending champion. Lucas Glover, who has great tournament history here, probably one of the best in the field over the last 5 years. Joe, 7K range is going to be the toughest one to red light people, I think, to scratch them off your list. Very deep, going to be very hard to find. Oh, I even forgot Cameron Young, who's probably kicking himself, who bogeyed the par 5 on the back 9, losing to 1 to Sam Burns eventually. Joe, 7K range. Can you pick anybody out here that's going to separate from the rest of them?
Man, it's jam-packed. You summed it up perfectly, Andrew. A jam-packed range. This 7K range, we often say it can make us or break us on any given week. Some weeks we're struggling to find just a couple of guys that we like, and on a week like this, we're really struggling to kick some guys out to try to narrow things down a little bit. I'll hit on a couple guys, even though there are more than a couple really good plays in this range. I feel like it's a good bounce back buy low spot on Mito Pereira there. We saw him at 9.9K last week, all the way down to 7.8K this week. This field isn't that much stronger, and he didn't actually play bad last week. He actually gained 5.6 strokes on approach, Andrew, at the Sanderson, but he just lost 4.7 strokes putting. So really good tee to green. His second great, really good tee to green outing. Really good iron player, which is something we're looking at here. And he has performed a little bit better on bent over his short career. But, I'm willing to buy the dip here on Mito, especially if his ownership kind of takes a hit after an underwhelming outing last week. I'll go right back to the well. A young player we like, Maverick McNeely, doesn't have great course history here, which is kind of surprising. He's got a home out in Vegas, plays this golf course a lot, works with Butch and Claude Harmon out here in Vegas. So I think we can give Maverick McNeely a look. You could make the argument he's a different player now than he's been in the past. Feels like he's really made some great strides over the past year. Danny Willett, just want to give him a shout out, man. Congrats on a win last week in Europe. So you kind of have to wonder where he will be coming off that big win over in Europe last week. Norman, I really like. You mentioned him. He's a vet. Great course history, kind of tanked, honestly, coming down the year. But you mentioned the type of season he had. Played extremely well in the major championships, had a top 5 at the Players. And the course history here is phenomenal. So he's a veteran. You can kind of bet that we'll get back on track this week. Really like him. As we move down towards the bottom, just continues to be lots of solid options. Talk about a guy, Andrew, we're taking on a little volatility, kind of in that Matthew Wolf mold. Had a really good Sunday at the Sanderson and has got really good course history here. Top 20s in 3 of his last 4 Shriner starts. Our boy Luke List down at 7,200. Always seems to be gross when you look at the numbers, especially with the putter. But man, he's just a ball striker extraordinaire. This is the type of track where he can get things going. Going to give Luke List a look in tournaments, and that kind of does it. That's all I'm gonna hit on the 7K, Andrew. I think we could talk about this range all night, but we'll keep moving it along, man. Just really love this 7K range. I think there's a lot of ways you can go this week.
Couldn't agree more, Joe. You basically reiterated everything I said. So moving on the 6K range, we're going to have some similar issues down here. A lot of vets down here that have competed, and a lot of newcomers. I mean, just going to have to. It's going to be hard to really eliminate people down here. I would say that I feel like as you get down here in the 6K range, you're going to look for major upside down here and less value. So if I'm down here looking around, it would be hard for me to like pin myself to let's just say like a Matt Kuchar who's 6,600. Whenever you feel like Matt Kuchar's having a pretty good weekend, is going to be a top 20. Whenever or compared to let's say somebody like Garrett Higo or what about just last week, a Hayden Buckley who nearly came away with a victory. He's down here, a Docker Edmond. I feel like if you're going to pick down here, let's go for it all. Let's don't just go for a top 20. Somebody, I'll even throw it out there. He might be done, but I'll even throw out there like a Docker Edmond. You're kind of going with the gusto when you get down here. Our buddy Brian Ray's guy had a top 20 last week. Willie McGirt, 6,100 down here, Joe. But yeah, I definitely feel like when we get down here in the 6K range, we need to put a little bit more gamble into our selection, even though there's a lot of very, very, very capable players down here in the 6K range. Joe, you want to hit a few down here?
Yeah, man, I totally agree with kind of the thought process, Andrew. I think it's something we've talked about. We want to emphasize on this show, kind of going forward this upcoming season, man. We want to build winning lineups. We're not trying to cash. We're trying to take down tournaments. The way to do that, as you mentioned, down here in this cheap range is to be aggressive. We want to look for guys with upside. We're not so concerned with making the cut, but we're looking for a guy that can get us a top 10 at $6,700. And I think that's what you're trying to drive home, and I 100% agree with it, man. I think you can look at some of these young guys down here. We're seeing we saw a ton of KFT guys, kind of a youth movement last week at Sanderson. A lot of that was due to hot putters, which we don't want to rely on. But, man, these guys are so talented now, Andrew. They're coming out of college and coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, and they're just immediately competing to win. And it almost seems like, these older guys, you mentioned some of these vets, a Kuchar down here, some of those type of guys, man, it almost seems like their time has passed with these young guys coming on. So I'm more than willing to look at them. Trey Mullinex is a guy that bombs it. You mentioned him last week. Excellent call. He played well at Sanderson. I'll mention kind of a hometown guy if we want to take that angle, a guy that has upside, Scott Piercy. Volatile player, but he's a big Vegas guy, plays this golf course all the time. The course history reflects that. He's played well here. Hayden Buckley, you brought up, another young player that's kind of coming up. Certainly has a lot of talent. A guy that logged a T5 in this golf tournament last year, always plays good this time of year, and actually looked good tee to green in his last two starts. Peter Malnati. Had a T5 here last year and a T15 a couple of years ago, I believe, in this golf tournament. So I think he's a player you can look at. Let's dive deep, Andrew. James Hahn always plays well during the swing season. Had a top 5 in this golf tournament last year, so I think you can give James Hahn a look. My boy Grayson Sigg let me down in a huge way last week, unfortunately, but at 6,200, I'll go back to the well. I believe in him. I think he's a talented player. Had a really bad round Thursday, forced him to miss the cut, but I'm fine going right back to the well with a Grayson Sigg, a guy with that kind of talent.
What about 32-year-old UTC grad, 32-year-old PGA rookie Stephen Yeager, tied for 26th last week, struggled a little bit on the weekend coming in, but this seems like a course that's going to be fit for him. Putts well on big greens, Joe.
Yeah, man, Yeager he's so frustrating to me because he's got so much talent, borderline dominant on the Korn Ferry Tour for a few years now, and it just seems like he can't make that step when he gets on the PGA Tour. He's made it up to the big leagues a couple times. Went back down the KFT, plays really well down there. So hopefully this time he can get it going. He's got a T20 on his resume in this tournament, Andrew. So we know the talent's there. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Yeah, and so Joe, saying that, who's your dart play of the week? I mean, there's really, you can go anywhere here, but what dart you throwing out there and hope it sticks?
It's tough, man. Like you said, there's so many great options down here. I'm gonna go Luke List. I like the way he closed out last week. I love the ball striking. Some good course history here. He's a Vandy guy, Tennessee guy, so we like to pull him for Luke. So I'll toss out Luke List as my dart. Who you going with, man?
Dart play of the week. I'm going to go a little bit more veteran, I believe. And it's really not as much of a dart as anything, but I'm going with Maverick McNeely, 7,700 and DK. Probably gonna have pretty good odds. I haven't even checked the odds yet on overall winner. I really like him. And like you said, a resident. Usually, this is a little stronger field than I usually like to go with somebody like him, but I mean, we think he can. You know, me and you've talked about it, we think he is a future star on the PGA Tour. So I like Maverick McNeely, but really, I mean, anything below 8K, just a ton of talent down here. So that's really nothing really out of sync. Who do you think is going to win, Joe? Where's your heart at this week?
Man, I'm gonna go with the true meaning of the heart play. A guy that I'd really like to see play well. And a guy I'm really pulling for, and a guy that I think can play well. I'm gonna go Matthew Wolff. It could go bad, I know. Could be a broken heart. Could be a broken heart play. But I'm pulling for the kid. Like kind of how he's fought through some things. And I love the upside, man. So I'm going Matty Wolff.
Matthew Wolff, huh? I just see this guy that I'm about to name my heart play of the week as the guy that's just walks with such swag. It's almost offensive, and he's not looking back. And that's Abe Anser. Every time I don't talk about him, he crushes me. Every time I do talk about him, he lets me down. But this is a golf course and not going to be too long for him. Yeah. Like you said before, if you hit a lot of fairways and a lot of greens, good things happen. And he's about one of the straightest hitters I've ever seen in my life. And his swag is unconscious at times. So
yeah, man,
he's not going back down from anybody. So no, Abe Anser for me, Matt Wolff for you.
Love Abe Anser.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised, Andrew, to see Sam Burns play really well again this week. I'll toss that out there too.
I like that play. I still think we've talked about Zalatoris seems like every week since the Masters last year. I just don't see a tournament. I don't really see his breakthrough victory being on a course that is going to be a 20 under. That's kind of holding me back. We wait till we get down to Florida and you're going to see them single digit tournaments. I could see him playing really well in those. So Joe, man, I appreciate it. If you like what you heard, hit us a like, get us subscribed, share with your friends, hit us up on Twitter. We're always there and active. We got this week plus 6 more weeks in the fall swing. Thanks for joining us just for this short time on your week. Give us a little bit of your life. I'm Andrew Putters. That's Joe Nicely. You have listened to the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast brought to you by Rotoballer.com.
I've already hit 3 in the lake. It's gone.